Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sobriety and Everything Else. I am Eric Andrew, your sobriety coach and host for today's episode. Actually, I'm the host for pretty much all the episodes. And I'm coming to you live, sort of, from my dining room studios. I wish I could be more special about all of that, but that's what it is. Okay, so today, let me get right to it. I want to talk to you about a tool that actually is, I think, a tool for life. Also, something that you can utilize in your life quite a bit, not only in terms of trying to stay sober and not drink or use, but you can certainly use it in other aspects of your everyday life. And it's a great tool to kind of manage emotions throughout any kind of situation that you might be going through. And that tool is space. So you might go, well, wait a minute. What do you mean space? What does that mean? I'm going to start out with a quote. There was a quote by Viktor Frankl. He wrote one of a few books, but the book that I read by him was Man's Search for Meaning. Now, Viktor Frankl was a Jewish Holocaust survivor, and he wrote a book about that. Man's Search for Meaning was really kind of focused in on his experience in the camps and how he was able to survive and get through that, not only physically, but mentally. And he talks a lot about space. And his quote, I want to read it perfectly, but his quote is, between stimulus and response, there's space. In that space is our power to choose our response. I will leave this in the show notes again, but let me read it one more time for you, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. So let's talk about that. Let's break it down a little bit. So stimulus, what do we mean by that? So think of our world as just, or think of your day. So the moment you get up, what's the first stimulus that you respond to? Maybe an alarm clock, right? Maybe birds chirping out your window if it's the spring or summer, the sun shining through the window. Stimulus, those kinds of stimuluses that wake us up, that get us active. It could even be your mind. You might have a lot on your mind. I know I've been there, where there's been a lot of things on my mind, and that tends to wake me up. That's a stimulus. Stimulus can be other people. Stimulus can be the person at the Starbucks window. Stimulus can be, a coworker. Stimulus can be a significant other or other family members that you are engaging with on an everyday level, your manager, whoever. So we are constantly bombarded by stimulus. All right. So that stimulus plays a role, and it will move us usually to do something. So now, in a lot of cases, stimulus is reactive, meaning we react to the stimulus. We don't really think about it. We react to it. We might think about it later, but we react to it. And what Viktor Frankl is talking about is that there's a space. So there's a space between the stimulus and the reaction. Okay. And that space can be very small, which for many of us, and let's just think from an addiction perspective, that space is very small. We get triggered by something in our lives, and before we know, we're drinking it away, right? We are at the bar ordering a drink. We're at home, we're at the liquor store, we're wherever we're at, buying whatever it is that we use to escape the feelings of that stimulus. So it's not the stimulus. It's not the thing that happens. It's really the mover. It's how it makes us feel, right? So we don't want that feeling as an addict, and I'm putting alcoholism in this kind of umbrella term of addict. As an addict, our first goal, our real reaction is that we want to escape it. right? We want to get away from it in some way. And our go-to is whatever our drug of choice is. That's really where we are living when we are in active addiction, right? So as we come out of active addiction, we are trying to figure out ways to not be active in it, to not want it, to try to break the habit or whatever, however we want to phrase it. We're trying to change the way we do things. So one of the ways to change the way we do things is when we have this stimulus hit us, that before we do anything about it, we pause and we live in the space. And in that space, so think of it this way, that you're walking along a path and you get to a point where there's 3 or 4 choices. You could go to your right, you could go to your left, you could go right down the center, the way you're going. And you have this moment where you get to make a choice, right? You can choose which way to go. Now, you may take a moment and think about that and go, well, what is my goal here? What am I trying to do? Where am I trying to go? What is the adventure that I want to have? Am I trying to cut time? So maybe there's a path that's a shortcut, right? So we have all these thoughts that go in our mind before we make that choice. Usually. So in addiction, it's a very similar moment. So we have this stimulus that hits us, this trigger, and we can immediately react to our go-to, hit that, whatever that addiction is that we're into, And by the way, this addiction doesn't have to necessarily just be alcohol or drugs. It could be food. It could be candy. It could be the gym. It could be, sex. It could be anything, obviously we're focusing on addiction, substance abuse addiction, but addictions can kind of come in a lot of different ways. All right. So Viktor Frankl is talking about this in terms of, when you focus in on being in the camps, he has some choices of how to view what's going on. Obviously what's going on is horrible, is bad, but how does he want to respond to that? How does he want to deal with that? And that's where it came down to. So his argument is, in that space, in that moment where we have all these choices, that's where power is. We don't have to choose the regular way of doing things. We don't have to choose, in the case of him, he didn't have to choose fear and sadness. He could make a different choice. He could look for the beauty in the world that he was in. The one moment where maybe he looked down and there was a little flower growing up through the ground. I'm not trying to tell you that in that moment, with all that was going on there and all the negative that was going on, that you should disregard that. But one of the things that you are trying to do is survive it, right? So you have to try to find some sort of grace in it, something where the normalcy of the world pops in, right? The normalcy of human nature, of the beauty of the world kind of pops in. And that's what he was really arguing there. So between stimulus and response is a space, all right? And in that space is where power is, because we can choose. So let's get back to our addictions, the reason we're here. And the reason why I think this is such a great tool to have. When you are feeling these moments where you're triggered. So let's say your boss gives you a really tough assignment for the next day, right at the end of the day, and basically kind of says, look, I'm really evaluating you on this. So this needs to be good. This could be your raise this year. So there's a lot of pressure, right? And you're getting this at the end of the day, and he wants it first thing in the morning. So now this means you're going to have to work at home. Late night is going to be a late night to try to get all this stuff ready to go and done and set up. So you're really angry. You're really upset over this, that, why couldn't this have started at, when you got there, where you could have been working on it at work versus having to take it home. So there's your stimulus, right? You're angry, you're frustrated. And your first thought from an addiction perspective is, I need to relax. I need a drink to relax. All right. Now, we kind of know where that's going to go, because it's not going to be one drink, especially for us who are addicts. It's going to be more than that. And then what happens for the project? And now does it become this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of, I was put in a bad position. There was no way I was ever going to accomplish it. So of course I failed it. So now here I am not getting the raise, on and on and on, right? There's that opportunity for that. Or there's an opportunity to pause in the space and think about it. What are my choices here? How can I go about this? So again, the first choice would be, I'm really pissed, so I'm going to go and have a drink and calm myself down. But there's 100 other choices that you could make. So another choice could be, I'm going to go to the gym and go work out. I'm going to go work out for a half an hour, 45 minutes, get this frustration out of me. And then I'm going to sit down with a piece of paper and plan how I can put this together. So I don't spend all night on it, but I do it well. That's a choice, right? Another choice could be, I'm going to go for a run, and then again, go through the same thing. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to come home, shower, have something to eat. Then I'm going to sit down with a piece of paper and kind of plan out how this is going to work, how I'm going to approach this. Those are some other choices that you can make, right? Maybe it's retail shopping. Maybe you need to, hey, I need to go walk around in a store for a while and just calm down. I don't know. There's many other things it could be. I'm going to go on a short hike in nature and just get out around trees and grass and birds and animals and kind of feel reconnected to the earth and allow that to ground me. And in that grounding, I'll be able to really think through the problem and figure it out. I know for myself now in recovery that I've been able to do more things that are similar to what I just described, where yes, of course I could make the choice to blow my recovery up and go to the bar and, just have a case of the fuckets and drink, right? But let's just play that out. So there's another tool in this called play the tape forward. So let me do it that way. What if I did that? What happens? So I go into the bar. Do I have one drink? No, never. I'm going to have more than one drink. I'm going to complain to the bartender, whoever's sitting next to me, that I don't know at all. I might even buy that person a drink and I still don't know them. I may not even know their name, but they're talking to me, so I feel pretty good about that. So I buy them a drink. And before I know it, it's 10, 11 o'clock at night. I maybe eaten a couple of bar snacks and I'm drinking my face off. And I still have to do this project or try to do this project. So now I go home and I'm inebriated. And I'm trying to sit down. I'm trying to work on this project and put it together and figure out what needs to happen. And I'm missing steps and I'm missing things. And now I'm getting frustrated again. And before I know it, it's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm only halfway through it. I'm like, okay, well, let me go lay down for a while and I'll get back up a little bit early and I'll finish it off. So I go lay down, I get back up, I start to look at what I did, and I'm starting to realize that there's parts of it that don't make any sense. I'm going to have to redo those parts before I can even finish it. So now I'm diligently trying to get those done. I get those done and I get started on the last half, but now it's time. I'm actually almost late to get out the door. I get stuck in traffic. I get to work. It's 8:30. The boss wants us on his desk at 9. I have a half an hour to finish the project. And now, I'm rushing, right? I'm rushing. It's 9 o'clock. I get a call from his office. Where's the project? I'll be right there. It's 9:30, calls again. I need that project now. Why is it not here? 9:45, he's calling again. Where are you? Finally, about 10 o'clock, I bring the project in the door. It's done, but there's problems with it that need to be worked out. I'm hungover. I'm overly tired because I barely got any sleep. And what little sleep I had was restless because I was thinking about the project. Plus I was drunk. And so I was being affected by the alcohol intake. And now I'm even more frustrated than I was the night before. That's that guy. So let's think about the other guy. So the other guy, and I'm playing the tape forward. The other guy decides to go on a run. So he goes home, changes his clothes. It's a nice day out. He goes for a nice run, 3-mile run. Feels really good about that. It's allowed some of the frustration to get out. He was able to be outside in nature, get a run in, which is a run he needed to get in because he's got a race coming up. So he was able to accomplish actually a goal that was going to be part of his afternoon anyway. And he was able to kind of start to think about the project and how could he lay this out. So in his head, he was thinking about it. In fact, he had some ideas. So when he got back in the car, he actually grabbed a notebook that was laying there and wrote down some of the steps that he thought he could start to take that would start setting him up to get this project done correctly and get it done this evening at a reasonable hour. So he drives home, takes a shower, has a little bit of dinner, sits back down with the paper, starts to map out a little bit more of it, and he starts his project about 7 o'clock, 7:30 at night. By about 11 o'clock at night, he's finished. He's finished the whole project. It's in good shape. He rereads it and looks over it again. It all makes complete sense. It's all ready to go. He's made a copy, so he knows that once he gets to work, he can, make the other copies that he needs. So he is able then to get to bed around 11:30, and he's up by 7 and getting ready for work, and gets into work by 9 o'clock when he actually gets there a little bit early, 8:45, and he's getting his copies done. And by 8:59, he's sitting in the boss's office and getting ready to go in to hand him the project that was due at 9. That's the other choice. So there's two choices. There were two ways that I could have done it. And by playing the tape forward in both ways, I saw one way that was really a crash and burn way of doing things that probably was going to leave me really frustrated at the end with probably more work that I was going to have to do another night. Or there was the other way of doing it, of where I got my frustrations out through a physical activity and was able to calm my mind, where I could think logically about what needed to happen, get that set up and ready to go, and be able to finish the project at a fairly reasonable hour, maybe a little bit later than normal, but a fairly reasonable hour, get some decent sleep, get to the office and get things ready to go. So there are two different ways to do things, right? And that's where the power is. The power really does lie with you in this whole deal with recovery. You have all the power. You get to make the choice. Am I reacting to this trigger in a negative way, meaning I'm going to go back to my addiction, or in a positive way? I'm going to pick or choose an activity that's going to allow me to get rid of the frustration I'm having and to move on with my day. You get to make that choice. No one else does. You get to make that choice. So remember that in this time of recovery, that when you can find space, when you can stop yourself from reacting to the stimulus and give yourself that moment, you get what you do is you actually give yourself all the power, and you get to make a choice. How am I reacting to this? Or more than likely not, but once you're making a choice, you're not reacting anymore, you're responding. So how am I responding to this stimuli that has happened? How do I want to respond to this? What are my choices? What makes the most sense? Where am I going to get the most out of it if I respond a certain way? And that's power. That's power over your addiction. That's power over your life. That's strength. That's leadership. That's all the things that all of us, when we think about how we want our lives to play out, if we could think about the correct way to play it out, that's what we want. We want to be leaders. We want to make logical, good choices in our life. We want to make choices that make sense. Not only choices in regards to the stimuli, but choices outside and around the stimuli that help support our health, mentally and physically, that help to support our lives. So remember, in my second thing, the guy got out, got out on a run. And what did I say? He needed to get a run in because he had a race coming up anyway. So it wasn't a wasted time at all. It was a time that he needed. So he took that time, but it also helped to relieve his anxiety and relieve his frustration over what had just happened at work, and allowed him to view things in a more calmer way, which allowed for logic to come in, in working out the problem. So when you are looking at your process, when you are dealing with your days, especially in early sobriety, and you're saying, how do I get through this? Space. Remember Viktor Frankl, right, and what he says. So I'm going to read it again. So Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, there's space. In that space is our power and our chance to change how we respond. I think I paraphrased it a bit, but so there you have it, folks. Space, the new frontier, right? The new frontier, not on Star Trek. The new frontier in sobriety is space. Find it. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.